3 sinister countryside horror tales revealed, terrifying encounters with the haunted and cursed. Sarah, a weary single mother, drove along the desolate back roads of Maplewood, the cursed whispers of ancient folklore swirling like the autumn leaves around her. Legends of the cursed hollow echoed in her mind, tales of the lost, who vanished into the night and were never seen again. Each turn of the road felt like a warning, and the windshield wipers barely kept the rain at bay, as if nature itself conspired against her. With every passing mile, a nagging dread grew in the pit of her stomach, a drumming pulse that begged her to turn around. But she pressed on. The voices of her children, Lily and Sam, reverberated in her thoughts, their innocent laughter a bittersweet reminder of what she fought for. The burden of 2 jobs tugged at her like heavy chains, and tonight her mind was a storm of exhaustion and worry. And then, as if the very night conspired against her, her headlights fell upon an abandoned farmhouse, cloaked in shadows and ooze, its once welcoming charm twisted into something grotesque. A remnant of happier days swallowed by creeping ivy. A brief flare of light flickered from within the crumbling walls, a beacon in the dark, calling her closer. With her heart hammering, Sarah stepped out of her car, the biting cold wrapping around her like ice. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself as her bones shook, an unsettling chill creeping down her spine like a warning. Yet curiosity pounded louder than fear, and she tiptoed toward the door. Inside, a scene unfurled like a nightmare. Familiar faces, once friendly and warm, now distorted in a twisted masquerade. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Laughter echoed unnervingly, reverberating through her skull, hollow and hollowing, tinged with an otherworldly energy. Mr. Granger, the community's trusted leader, stood at the center, eyes gleaming with a sinister light, weaving words that felt like a dark incantation. They were not gathering. They were ensnared. "Wretched souls," she heard him murmur, "drawn by despair, fate will deliver what they seek." His voice a silken thread, wrapping around her mind like fog. Terror surged through her as she realized the truth. These were not her neighbors. They were predators in search of something darker, something only the void could provide. Before Sarah could retreat, the air thickened with dread, suffocating as they began chanting, summoning forces that gnawed at her sanity. Panic clawed at her throat when she overheard whispers of dark rituals, outsiders disappearing into the eerie night. She staggered backward, heart racing. She had to get away. Days passed torturously, her children slipping into strange behaviors, Lily spouting phrases from unseen friends, her eyes clouded with visions Sarah could not comprehend. Sam's drawings grew grotesque, haunting images that seemed to reach out from the paper, practically alive. Each time she glanced at her little ones, a cold sweat drenched her back. A frigid shadow fell over her resolve as the sheriff's dismissal reverberated in her ears. "Just kids being kids," he had said. But deep inside, she felt the ground shifting beneath her. Who could she turn to? She had walked into a nightmare of complicity, a whole town catering to the very fiends she had once trusted. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each night, Sarah sank deeper into the pit of dread. She clutched a stuffed bear, whispering protective prayers against the suffocating shadows that threatened to choke the light out of her children. But on a fateful night, when the moon sank beneath sullen clouds, her trembling fingers found a charred photograph hidden among cobwebs in the farmhouse, a life once filled with laughter, now held a sinister phrase scrawled in hasty strokes. "You should have stayed away." The darkness tightened its grip, and as she stared into her children's innocent faces, she realized with a gut-wrenching panic that whatever sent those whispers into the void had its sights set on them. Sarah braced herself, knowing the confrontation she had dreaded was inevitable, a reckoning with the evil lurking within the heart of Maplewood. With determination igniting in her veins, she felt the shadows creep closer, ready to unveil the mystery hiding beyond the edge of her fragile reality. The clock ticked ominously, echoing through the stillness that had settled over Sarah's home. The weight of the night pressed down like a suffocating blanket. Just outside, the gusty winds howled, ripping through the branches of the old oak tree, a sentinel that had watched over the house for generations. Inside, fear materialized, hanging heavy in the dim light. She could hear Lily whispering to an unseen presence in the corner of the room, her small voice laced with an urgency that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" Sarah's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "Mommy, he says he's my friend. He wants to play," Lily replied with a tinge of glee, her eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. A chill skittered down Sarah's spine. "Lily, you need to—" "Don't shush her!" A voice suddenly cold and commanding summoned from the shadows. It belonged to Sam, who sat crouched in a corner, his face twisted in a mix of unease and curiosity. "He knows things, Mom. Things we need to know." The void in the room filled with an unspoken dread. "Stay away from whatever that is," she snapped, tears stinging her eyes. The desperation clashed with disorientation. Had they already crossed the threshold of reality? Time felt warped, stretching and compressing in ways that made her head spin. She rushed to them, cradling Lily's head. "We're going to get through this. It's just your imagination. But even as she spoke, she felt the shadows shifting, wrapping around her home like sprawling tendrils. Night fell deeper, and the flickering light bulb above them throbbed like a heartbeat, dimming further with every pulse. Outside, off in the distance, the ancient farmhouse loomed under the heavy clouds, a bastion of malevolence. It was calling to her with a curious sort of magnetism. The dark memories she had unearthed still echoed, and with every tick of the clock, she felt the sinister pull tightening. Suddenly, Lily's giggle sliced through the silence, unnaturally bright, yet barbed. "His name is Mr. Granger," Lily sang, her voice echoing with a childlike cheer that sent ripples of terror through Sarah. "He's coming to play with us." "No!" Sarah screamed, her heart racing. She had to act. She had to pull them back from the brink, away from the eyes that might already be watching. With trembling hands, she grabbed the flashlight and swung it towards the window, desperate to penetrate the darkness outside. But it wasn't the outside she needed to fear. Shadows danced on the walls, elongating and writhing, twisting into shapes that were all too familiar. The faces from the farmhouse were creeping into her home, pushing through the barriers of safety she had desperately tried to maintain. "Mummy, why are you scared?" Sam asked, eyes wide, searching her face for answers in a reality that was quickly collapsing. "Because they want you, Sam. Whatever they are, please, listen to me." The lantern flickered, and with it came a haunting whisper chilling her blood. "Come join us, Sarah. You can't save them. They will be ours." With each word, the shadows thickened, forming grotesque shapes that slithered closer. The promises of the cursed town echoed in her ears, poisoning her thoughts, and for a moment, Sarah felt an unsettling warmth flow through her, a temptation to let go of the fight. "No!" she cried, snapping back into reality. She couldn't let that darkness take her children. "We need to leave. Now!" She grasped their hands tightly, clutching them like life rafts as she dashed towards the door. But as she reached for the knob, something on the other side halted her. A heavy pounding, desperate and demanding, a sound that was all too familiar. The voice of Mr. Granger, reverberating with a promise, chilling the air. "Stay! You will never leave us again." Sarah froze, dread washing over her like an ice-cold wave. The air crackled with malevolence, and just as the door shuddered against her hold, she felt the chilling grip of impending doom tighten around her family. What would she do? Embrace the darkness? Or fight to protect her children at all costs? With the shadows surging behind her, Sarah steeled herself and made a choice. But as she turned to face the horror looming at her back, a new question echoed in her mind. What sacrifices would she need to make to fight against the tide of darkness rising from the cursed hollow? In a heartbeat, Sarah swung the door open, adrenaline driving her limbs as she stepped into the swirling darkness beyond. The wind howled, a tempest that seemed intent on dragging them back. Lily clutched her mother's hand, her small body shaking, while Sam followed close, eyes wide like saucers, torn between fear and curiosity. "Run!" Sarah shouted, her voice barely piercing the chaos around them. Together they stumbled across the lawn, the grass slick with dew and damp earth that seemed to gulp at their feet, trying to pull them down into its grasp. But the shadows pursued them. Dark whispers hissed through the night air, weaving through the branches, echoing off the ancient oak, teasing her with promises of despair. "You can't escape." The farmhouse loomed ahead, a grotesque silhouette against the roiling sky, flickers of light pulsing from within like a heartbeat. The very ground beneath her felt alive, thrumming with a sinister energy that sent shockwaves of dread coursing through her. "Mommy, I want to go home," Sam cried, glancing back as if expecting something to emerge from the tangled shadows. "No," she replied, desperation clawing at her throat. "Not back there. Ever." They pushed forward, ignoring the icy fingers of the night that seemed to reach for them. But then Lily stopped, her tiny frame planted firmly like a stubborn statue, gaze fixed on something unseen. "Mr. Granger is here," she squealed, her voice echoing in the treachery of the night. "Lily, run," Sarah pleaded, but her words hung, unraveling like thread in the wind. From behind them a laugh broke the tension, light and airy, yet dripping with malice. A figure cloaked in shadow stepped forth from the darkness with movement too fluid, too unnatural. "Why don't we have some fun?" The voice was smooth, yet laced with something twisted. Sarah's heart raced. The figure floated closer, the shadows twisting around it like a living cloak, a sickening reminder that their threat was not merely a figment of imagination. Sam tugged at her sleeve, urgency flooding his voice. "Mom, please, keep going!" she yelled, and they sprinted toward the farmhouse, the wooden door a sanctuary that felt miles away. The walls shuddered with each heartbeat, a warning unheeded. Then with a terrible shatter, the windows of the house exploded outward, raining glass like shards of despair onto the lawn. From the chaos within, shadowy forms began seeping out, their grotesque shapes twisting, eyes glinting with dark hunger. "Mommy, they're coming!" Sam shrieked, pulling at her with all his might, while Lily's giggles danced behind them, a twisted melody of joy and terror. "Into the house!" Sarah screamed, grasping Sam's hand as she darted inside, dragging Lily unwillingly behind her. She slammed the door shut, her heart thudding as she pressed against it, a frail barrier against the clamor outside. The shadows swirled around the edges of the door, pulsing with malevolence, whispering promises of dread and unearthly playthings. She could feel the weight of them pressing down as she fought to catch her breath. "Mom, what do we do?" Sam's voice trembled, panic and confusion swirling together. "We find a way out," she gasped, her mind racing. The only other exit was the back of the house. They had to make it there. As she searched the dim interior, she felt the oppressive dread gathering momentum behind her, creeping closer until it felt suffocating. The shadows were angry. They knew she was in their realm, and they would not let her leave without paying a price. "Mr. Granger wants to play hide-and-seek, Mommy," Lily chimed, a twisted sort of cheerfulness sparking in her eyes. "Lily, listen to me," Sarah snapped, eyes wide, trying to ground her daughter. "This isn't a game. We need to hide. We have to be quiet." But the shadows stirred, coiling through the open door, filling the room with an icy chill. A low, distorted chuckle echoed from somewhere deep within the darkness, each laugh taunting her as if to welcome them into its deadly embrace. With the shadows whispering her name like a chant, Sarah felt a dreadful realization gnawing at her mind. She needed answers. But at what cost? What would Mr. Granger demand to let them leave? What darkness was she willing to confront to protect her children? The shadows pulsed, waiting. There was no escape. Only a haunting game remained. Sarah felt the air grow thicker, the shadows coiling tighter, hungry for their fear. Sam clung to her, eyes darting around the room for a way out, while Lily, lost in her own dark joy, seemed entranced by the swirling malevolence. "Not a game," Sarah muttered, her body pressed against the door, heart hammering against her ribs. The shadows whispered again, a soft susurration that slithered into her ears, curling around her thoughts, urging her to embrace despair. The walls felt as if they were closing in, painted with the colors of dread. "Mommy, we should play with Mr. Granger," Lily said, giggling. The sound made Sarah's skin crawl. How could her daughter find joy in this darkness? "No!" Sarah snapped, turning to face her daughter. "We're not playing anything. We need to go now." She looked at Sam, desperation gripping her throat. "We have to find that back door." With shaking hands, Sarah turned away from the door, feeling the shadows stretch towards her. Each step into the room set off an echoing ripple of panic. The furniture loomed like dark sentinels, chaotic shapes cast by panic-induced shadows, their grotesque forms twisting as if they lived. "Mommy," Sam whispered, his voice barely a thread in the audible pulse of the shadows. "What if he finds us?" He didn't need to say who. In that moment, the name Mr. Granger hung heavy in the air, as oppressive as the dark itself. As if summoned, another chuckle filled the room, tinged with a sickening enthusiasm. "Will you come out to play?" The voice was sweetened but edged with a chilling metallic tinge. "No," Sarah breathed, feeling bile rise in her throat. The light flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced like lost spirits. "We need to move, now." They darted through the hall, the thin chain of hope tightening only to be jerked by the unseen spectres swooping down the walls. The kitchen loomed ahead, a dismal space where the copper pots hung like twisted trophies, memories of past meals drowning in the gloom. "Mummy!" Lily shouted suddenly, pointing toward a dark corner. "Mr. Granger is hiding there." Sarah spun sharply, dread twisting her insides. Nothing stirred except the shadows which pulsed, mocking laughter ringing in her ears. Sam pulled at Sarah's arm urgently. "We can't stay here," he whimpered. Before they could retreat, the lights dimmed to a near pitch. The kitchen swayed like a boat caught in a tempest, and then the darkness spoke again, malevolent whispers rippling through the heavy atmosphere. "Are you ready to play?" "Please!" Sarah's voice cracked, terror pooling in her chest. "We don't want to play." But the shadows surged, filling the kitchen until it felt like breathing underwater. The spectre's silhouette emerged from the pitch black, features obscured but undeniably there, a twisted grin spreading across a visage that seemed to shift with every blink. "Every game has its rules," it said, its voice sweet yet dripping with malice. Moving instinctively, Sarah grabbed her children, their hearts racing as they dove toward the rear of the house, every instinct screaming that they had to escape. She knew she had only a moment before the fabric of darkness would envelop them completely, keenly aware that every second counted. Behind them, they could hear the shadows laughing, the chilling sound echoing through the walls as they pressed against darkness, a constant reminder of what was hunting them. A door stood ahead, the last line of hope. Would it lead to freedom or deeper into their doom? "Hold on tight," Sarah gasped, praying she still had enough strength to keep them safe. The door creaked ominously, and she burst through, choking on the shadow's laughter as she pulled her children behind her. The chill tightened around their throats, and in an instant, the laughter stopped. All that remained was silence, a quiet so profound that it felt alive, waiting, watching. What lay outside? Was it freedom, or a new horror waiting to unfurl its claws in the moonlight? The darkness pulsed, expectant. They had to find out. But at what cost? Sarah stumbled into the outside world, a realm that flickered dimly under the shroud of the moonlight. The freezing air bit at her skin, and she gasped, trying to shake off the swirling dread that clung to her like a second skin. Sam and Lily clutched her tightly, their small fingers trembling with fear. "Where are we?" Sam asked, his voice trembling, eyes wide as he scanned the dark landscape around them. The large, gnarled trees swayed gently as if whispering secrets to one another, shadows shifting with a mind of their own. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her heart pounding like a war drum, "but we need to keep moving." Lily tugged at Sarah's jacket. "Can we go back home, Mommy?" Her voice was a soft, scared whisper, laced with innocence that shattered Sarah's heart. "No, sweetie, we can't go back," she said, fear coiling tightly in her throat. The house felt alive behind them, its windows like dark eyes watching as they fled. A cold wind swept around them, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. It felt like the breath of something unseen slithering through the night. An agonizing pang of paranoia opened up inside her. Mr. Granger might still be hunting them, lurking just beyond their line of sight. "Mommy, I'm scared!" Sam's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to him, forcing a brave face, even as despair gnawed at her gut. "Stick close, kids. We'll be okay." They crossed the empty yard, the grass moist and chilling against their bare feet, a dimly lit path leading them deeper into the night. As they walked, the laughter from the house faded into an eerie silence, leaving only the distant sound of nocturnal creatures stirring in the brush. After what felt like ages, they approached a dilapidated barn looming in the shadows, its door hanging crookedly on rusted hinges. "We should check inside," Sarah suggested, directing them toward the entrance. "Is it safe?" Sam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but it's better than staying out here." The weight of uncertainty hung heavily in her stomach as they stepped inside, darkness swallowing them whole once more. Inside, the air was thick with dust and old memories, the smell of wood and damp hay clinging to the atmosphere. They moved cautiously, the echo of their footsteps unsettling in the vast emptiness. Cobwebs nestled in every corner, their delicate strands glimmering in the faint light, and breakdown was visible everywhere. Each sound seemed magnified, a whisper turned scream. Suddenly a creak echoed from the back of the barn. Sarah spun around, heart pounding, breath catching in her throat. It felt all too familiar, the sensation of being watched creeping back over her. "What was that?" Sam squeaked, a tremor in his voice. "Stay quiet," Sarah ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. She strained to hear, hoping it was just the barn settling. But then came the voice again, soft, yet dripping with that same sinister lilt. "Did you come to play?" It slithered in the air, curling around her. She wanted to scream, but swallowed her fear, clamping her mouth shut. "Sarah?" Sam's voice cracked. "They're in here with us!" Lily giggled, her tone disturbingly light-hearted, spinning in place as she danced with shadows that were not there. "Lily, stop!" Sarah hissed, panic clawing at her insides. "This isn't a game!" As if responding to her words, more shadows emerged from the recesses of the barn, swirling like dark smoke. They shifted and pulsated, writhing with life, mocking her. "Please," Sarah murmured, desperately searching for a way out, eyes wild. Seeking a hint of normalcy, she stepped back only to feel Sam's small hand slip from hers. "Sam!" she screamed, turning toward him. But what she saw sent ice through her veins. Sam stood frozen, mouth open as if he were about to scream, but no sound came out. The shadows coiled around his legs like snakes, drawing him toward the darkness. "Let him go!" "Mommy!" he cried, terror etched across his little face. They were not alone. Shadows grasped at them, hungry, and in that moment hope felt like a distant memory. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah lunged for him, desperate to grab his hand before it was too late. But would she be fast enough? Would the darkness consume them all? The very shadows they had hoped to escape now danced around them, awaiting their next move in a horrifying game. As the cold tendrils wrapped tighter, a new question clung in the air. How do you escape something that has already claimed you? Sarah lunged forward, her heart racing as the ground felt foreign beneath her feet, a dizzying mix of desperation and dread. The shadows writhed around Sam, slithering like dark smoke, their whispers growing louder, morphing incoherently in a haunting duet that cut deep into her soul. "Sam, hold on!" she screamed, fingers outstretched, wishing the world would bend to her will, wishing for the impossible. Time abandoned her, every second stretched into what felt like an eternity as she fought her way to her son, who was now frozen in terror. The darkness swirled, thick and tangible, and then, just as she reached for him, the ground seemed to convulse beneath their feet. The barn shook violently, as if echoing the unholy laughter of unseen creatures. "Mommy?" Sam's tiny voice pierced through the cacophony, and the shadows pulled him closer, their hunger unmistakable. Panic surged through Sarah. If she didn't act, he would vanish into them, swallowed whole by whatever horror awaited. "Lily!" she shouted, gripping her daughter's hand tightly, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "We have to go! Now!" Lily's giggle jarred her. The child twirled, eyes wide with childlike wonder, seemingly oblivious to the dread that wrapped around them. "But, Mommy, they just want to play." She tilted her head, as if the shadows were friends beckoning to her, soft and familiar. "No." Sarah's voice cracked, desperation clawing at her throat. "They're not your friends." She pulled Lily closer, feeling more like a mother fighting off monsters than a person seeking refuge. The very idea twisted her stomach into knots. The shadows tightened their grip around Sam, yanking him closer to the abyss. Sarah felt the ground pulse beneath her, a heartbeat echoing with the rhythm of impending doom. Suddenly, she remembered the old pendant her grandmother gave her, a protection charm. It was a sliver of hope in an ocean of despair. "Lily, stay here," she ordered, though she could feel the weight of Lily's innocence pulling stronger. The darkness shimmered, almost as if it sensed her fear, feeding on her vulnerability. Without giving a second thought, Sarah sprinted to the barn's rear wall, her feet pounding against the wooden boards, splinters digging into her soles. She searched frantically, her hands brushing against cobwebs, her heart pounding louder than the shadow's whispers. There it was, a glint of silver in the dusky gloom. She snatched the pendant from its resting place, took a deep breath, and clutched it in her palm. With newfound resolve, she spun around, ready to fight. "Let him go!" she shouted, channeling every ounce of her maternal instinct. The shadows paused, a moment of stillness enveloped them, and she felt the world grow heavy, time collapsing, air thinned, and fear hung thick. "Did you come to play?" The voice echoed again, now behind her, serpentine and mocking. Where it came from, Sarah didn't know, but the air twisted with the weight of countless eyes, hungry eyes. "Stay away!" she shouted and stepped back, glaring at the writhing mass before her. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if her fear gave them strength, yet somehow weakened them as well. As she turned to grab Sam, the shadows rushed forward, snatching her, dragging her back into their depths where screams faded into echoes. "Mommy, no!" Sam's voice shattered the silence as he flailed against the restraints of darkness. The barn shuddered, and the walls began to close in, warping grotesquely, trembling in a dance of agony. In one blinding moment of clarity, Sarah unleashed the pendant, a flash of silver illuminating the barn as shadows recoiled. A piercing light erupted, tangible and alive, scattering the darkness like cockroaches fleeing from the light. Just as hope flickered, the grounding sensation slipped from her grasp, the air thick and suffocating. "Mommy, no!" Sam cried again, a plea steeped in terror, and then everything spun into chaos. Would the light save them, or would it become another tool, leaving them drawn deeper into the veil of shadows? What lingered in the barn, shivering under the surface, waiting for its moment to strike? The light pulsed, filling the barn with a brilliance that seemed to slice through the darkness. For a brief moment, it chased the shadows back, revealing grotesque shapes writhing at the edges, swirling like mist caught in a tempest. Sarah felt an invigorating chill, igniting her spirit as she swayed the pendant like a beacon. But the shadows weren't gone. They recoiled, then regrouped, their hunger still palpable. She could see them slacken their grip on Sam, but their eyes, those countless hungry eyes, glinted like steel, taunting her. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. Desperation clawed at her throat, thick and choking. "Sam, grab my hand!" she screamed, stretching her arm towards him, urging him to fight. She could dimly see him, caught between planes of reality, fingers outstretched, willing himself to break free. The shadows slithered angrily, snapping at him like snakes, pulling him back toward the ravenous darkness. It was then that Lily's voice cut through the heavy air again, bright and innocent. "But, Mommy, they don't want to hurt him. They want him to play." Her little frame twisted, and she twirled blissfully, a lost lamb in a storm of chaos. "Lily, stop!" Sarah shouted, panic surging anew. Her daughter was drowning in a whirlpool of their malevolence, oblivious to the gravity of the nightmare. If she didn't pull Lily back, if she didn't reclaim her, everything would be lost. Summoning resolve, born from a heart filled with love, she lunged toward Lily. "Come here, sweetheart. We need to stick together." Lily spun to face her, a grin slicing across her cherubic face as though shaken from a dream. "Look, Mommy, they want to dance," she laughed, spinning like a leaf caught in the wind. "Oh God, no." Sarah felt the weight of the shadows, pressing in like a sinister fog. It was as if the barn itself threatened to swallow her whole, timbers creaking ominously under the strain. In a moment of clarity, Sarah grasped the pendant tighter, its cool metal biting into her palm, and she bellowed, "You can't have them!" The light flared brilliantly again, filling the barn with a searing glow, radiating warmth that wrapped around Sam and Lily, keeping them safe for the moment. But the shadows hissed, recoiling slightly, only to rebound with a ferocity that knocked her off balance. The barn shuddered, splintered boards screaming against the violence of the collapsing space. "Sam!" Sarah screamed, eyes stretching wide with terror. The shadows lunged, darting toward her son, their coiling tendrils reaching out to reclaim him. The air grew thick and acrid, stinging her eyes. "No!" she roared, charging towards him, each step a battle against the swirling tide of dark energy. She thought of the stories her grandmother told her about the darkness, creatures that fed on fear, lonely souls stuck between this world and the next. Just as she reached for Sam, the pendant flared one last time, sending a beam of light slicing through the shadows. But even as it lit the barn, Sarah could feel it flicker, a waning candle in a storm. "Mommy!" Sam wailed, his tiny form stretching toward her, his face a mask of terror. The shadows twisted and crawled back as if wounded, but far from defeated. They roared, a cacophony of growls and hisses, rising to drown out her thoughts, drowning out her will. Sarah felt the ground tremble beneath her, the very essence of the barn shifting in unnatural ways. She had to find a way to banish them, to free her children. As she gathered every ounce of strength, a chilling realization knotted her stomach. The pendant was not enough. The light was faltering, and it was then she noticed shadows creeping from the barn's edges, otherworldly shapes forming in the corners, growing closer, and the darkness beckoning like an insidious friend. In that chilling instant, something deeper stirred within the shadows, a whispering promise that wrapped around her heart, beckoning her into maddening depths. Would she find a way to save her children that night? Or were they damned to become part of the shadows forever? The light dimmed, and with it came a new question. What if the darkness offered more than just terror? What if it held truths that could destroy her very sanity? Sarah's heart raced, a drumbeat of dread thundering in her ears as reality began to warp. The barn creaked, as if in response to her fear, the air thick and suffocating. She locked eyes with Sam, still reaching for her, his tiny fingers trembling. The shadow surged again, a pulsating mass of darkness, seething toward Sam, hissing in sinister delight. "Don't let them take you, Sam!" Her voice was raw, torn from her throat in desperation. The pendant flickered, its brilliance fading with each frantic heartbeat. "Mommy!" Sam's voice cracked, tears streaming down his cheeks, pure terror painted across his face. The shadows hissed in reply. It was as if they understood her plight, that they fed on their fear, and they reveled in it, hungry for their hopelessness. Sarah's resolve hardened. There had to be a way, she thought, blocking out the chaos tightening around them. "Lily!" she cried, turning to her daughter, who was still dancing, twirling dangerously close to the malevolent forms. "Get away from them. They want to hurt you." Lily paused, as if considering her mother's words. But the shadows swirled and whispered promises into the girl's ear, seductive and sweet. "Come play with us, Lily." They beckoned, their voices dripping with honeyed malice. Shadows swept low, encircling Lily, as if to pull her into their dark embrace. Sarah lunged forward, the ground shifting beneath her like quicksand, slowing her momentum. "Lily, please, you don't want to play with them." With an effort that felt like lifting a mountain, she tore herself free from the earth's grip and darted toward her daughter. The pendant dimmed with every rush of energy, every step. Lily's laughter echoed in the barn, innocent but hollow, sending spikes of ice down Sarah's spine. Then, just as she thought she might reach her, the barn door slammed shut with a deafening bang, plunging the scene into deeper obscurity. Sarah stumbled, startled, her breath caught in her throat. The light from the pendant glimmered like a dying star against the sudden blackness blanketing them. "No!" she screamed, her voice breaking, feeling her grip on reality slip. The shadows lunged again, emboldened by her despair. They stretched and twisted, reaching for her children like claws from a nightmare. Suddenly, Sarah felt a shift within her, a flicker of something powerful. Maybe it was the love for her children, or perhaps it was anger fueled by the imminent loss. She raised the pendant higher, fueled by instinct, but the shadows didn't flee. They thrived, swirling and coiling around her. "Step away, I will protect my family." The defiance was raw, ripping from her soul. In that moment, the shadows paused, as if calculating her worth. The unreal quiet felt unnatural. Then, like a punch, a cold wave rolled over her, dragging her back. The air roared with the sounds of her own heartbeat, crashing like waves, mixing with the rancorous laughter of the shadows. And then, to her horror, she understood. The darkness was alive, it wanted something from her, or maybe it wanted her to embrace it. A glimmer of truth bubbled just beneath the surface. What if they were right? What if it wasn't just terror they offered, but a twisted sense of belonging? "No!" she shouted again, straining against the urge to succumb to the alluring draw. Her mind fought against the seductive lull of the darkness. But as she wrestled with the shadows, they reformed around her, slithering like smoke, coiling tighter, whispers curling around her thoughts. "Join us, Sarah. Find the truth in the dark. The truth you've been hiding from." The shadows began to merge, overwhelming her senses, reality warping. Sarah felt herself slipping like sand through her fingers. The darkness finally spoke, its voice a chilling embrace. "Will you trust us, or will you continue to fight against what you've been given?" As her resolve faltered, she turned and reached for Sam and Lily one last time. Time slowed, suspended between hope and despair. Would she let the darkness in, or could she still save her children? A sudden shudder ran through the barn, and the walls tightened around them, chaos erupting. As arms groped through the dark, searching for what they craved, Sarah had to make a choice. As the shadows howled and the light flickered precariously, could she overcome the temptation of becoming one with the darkness? Or was she too late to pull her family from its thrall? The shadows tightened their grip, a vice of darkness that seemed to breathe, pulsing in sync with Sarah's frantic heartbeat. She could feel the weight of despair pressing against her chest, threatening to overwhelm her. "I won't let you take them!" she screamed, forcing the words through the suffocating gloom. With every ounce of strength left in her, Sarah lifted the pendant again, its dim light flickering like a dying flame, but still holding a glimmer of hope. "You can't have my children!" she cried, her eyes darting to Lily and Sam, still painfully far away, ensnared in the swirling mass of despair and darkness. The shadows paused momentarily, their hisses turning to a growl, their forms shifting uneasily. The barn felt alive, with the wood moaning as if warning her of the fate that lay ahead. Just then, her children's faces broke through the darkness, fear painted across their features like freshly drawn chalk on a blackboard. "Mommy," Sam sobbed, dropping to his knees, his small frame trembling with terror. "Lily, come here," Sarah implored, her voice crackling like static, struggling to penetrate the malevolent whispers that beckoned her daughter closer. The shadows were relentless, their chilling voices weaving stories of pain and sadness directly into Lily's heart, telling her what she craved most: freedom from fear and the pain of watching her mother. "Come play, Lily. We'll never let you go." The shadows cooed, their tones sweet yet tainted, tugging at the girl's innocence. "No, Lily, stay with me." Sarah reached for her daughter, but the ground beneath her seemed to grip at her feet once more. It was a battle, her love and desperation against temptation and the promise of ease. Suddenly, a blast of wind rushed through the barn, dispersing some of the shadows like smoke caught in a gust. The pendant flared momentarily, glowing brighter than before. In that instant, Sarah saw her children clearly, their eyes wide with fear, reflecting back all the love she'd ever had for them. "Sam, Lily, hold my hand. I can get us out of here. We can't give in." The shadows recoiled, hissing in fury as if her words stung. They surged forward again, but Sarah, driven by fury, thrust the pendant dangerously ahead. "I am light! I am love!" Her voice cut through the darkness, rallying her strength. But the shadows lashed back, angry and fierce. "Love is weakness, Sarah. We will show you!" They roared, a cacophony that shook the very foundation of the barn. The walls crumbled, dust and splintered wood raining down around them, growing heavier with each second. Sarah's heart thundered as she felt cold tendrils wrap around her arms and legs. "No, get away from me," she shouted into the fray, but the darkness suffocated her voice, squeezing tighter, pulling her closer. The shadows twisted her emotions. Fear and doubt gnawed at her mind, whispering twisted truths. What if they were right? What if love couldn't protect them? In a moment of pure terror, she watched helplessly as Sam was jerked backward, dragged into the gaping maw of the shadows. "Mommy!" he cried, reaching out, his voice fading into the void. "No, Sam!" The scream tore from her throat, fraying her sanity. Then she saw it. A door, a small, glimmering portal of light at the far end of the barn, barely discernible through the darkness that swirled around her. Hope ignited in her chest as she gritted her teeth and darted toward it, drawing every ounce of remaining energy. She had to reach her children before the shadows tore them apart completely. But the darkness exploited her every falter. "Run, Sarah! Run to the truth of your soul!" they jeered, their voices rising in a sinister crescendo. With every step toward the light, darkness lashed out, clawing at her skin. But she pressed on. "Lily, Sam!" she cried out again as she stumbled, feeling time stretch sickeningly slow. She could barely see now, the shadows roiling in desperation to keep her within their grasp. Would the door lead to salvation, or would she lose everything? Could she find her children before it was too late? As she neared the shining portal, the darkness swelled behind her, threatening to devour her hope in an agonizing embrace. Would Sarah reach her children in time, or would the shadows drown her final chance? Sarah barreled toward the shimmering door, every fiber of her being straining to reach her children. The darkness roared behind her, fierce and unyielding, a tempest determined to lash at the fragile threads of hope she clung to. "Hold on, babies! I'm coming!" she cried, her voice breaking as she pushed through the chaos, the shadows hissing in rage around her. "Mommy! Don't leave us!" Sam's terrified wail echoed in her ears, sending adrenaline surging through her veins. She could almost feel him slipping away, the cold fingers of despair clinging to him, ready to drag him into the abyss. "Lily!" she shouted again, panic tightening her chest. Her daughter, still dancing with the shadows, giggled in a twisted sense of joy that felt like daggers in Sarah's heart. "Please, sweetheart, come to me, now!" In that moment, as if her frantic plea echoed through the swirling shadows, Lily halted, turning to her mother. The innocent look in her eyes flickered between joy and confusion, just a step away from the vast darkness. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore." The shadows hissed loudly in anger, feeling her resolve shift, and they surged toward Lily. But Sarah seized the moment. "Run, Lily! Just run! Grab my hand!" With a glance back at the fiery chaos, Lily bolted toward her mother. The shadows lunged as the light brightened, desperate to reclaim what they thought was theirs. "Faster, baby!" Sarah shouted, reaching her arms wide. The moment Lily's small hand touched her own, Sarah yanked her close, wrapping around her like a lifeline. But Sam was still not reached, and the shadows twisted with insatiable greed, enveloping him in their cold embrace. Sarah felt her heart fracture at the sight. "No, not my baby!" With renewed conviction, she pulled Lily along, darting to where she could feel Sam's presence. "Sam, I will not let you go." "Mommy, help me!" Sam cried, struggling but caught in the eerie grip of the darkness. Sarah could feel the weight of despair pressing down, how the shadows wrapped tighter with every moment, every heartbeat. Drawing every ounce of strength and love from the depths of her heart, Sarah surged forward. "Stop!" she roared at the darkness, the power of a mother's love fueling her words. The pendant glimmered terrifyingly bright, casting radiant beams that shattered the shadows' hungry whispers. The darkness retreated a fraction, screeching in anger, and in that moment of weakness, Sarah lunged forward. "Sam, take my hand!" Time slowed as the distance between them seemed to stretch and bend. She could see his tiny form struggling against the pull of the shadows. "Please, baby, trust me!" With a final desperate leap, Sam's hand shot toward her, grasping onto her fingers. Their connection sparked a surge of energy that surged through her veins, as if the pendant had sensed the bond of a mother's fierce love. As their grip tightened, the shadows shrieked in fury, retreating like waves in retreat. "You will pay for this, Sarah!" they cried, their voices swirling into a deafening cacophony, echoing with malice as they clawed at her. "Not today!" Sarah screamed with courage, yanking both Lily and Sam toward the blazing light. The portal shimmered brighter with every heartbeat, illuminating the barn like the dawn, breaking through the darkest night. As they collided with the warmth of the light, the shadows screamed in collective fury, flailing against the border that separated despair from hope. In an instant, they tumbled through the doorway, bursting into the crisp air of a new reality. A reality free of the suffocating darkness. Sarah landed hard, but managed to keep hold of her children, her heart racing, the weight of the nightmare lifting with every breath of fresh air. They lay sprawled on the ground, gasping, their eyes wide as they looked into the night sky, the stars twinkling above in a serene beauty that contrasted sharply with the horrors they had just escaped. "Mommy?" Sam whispered, his face pale but alive. "I'm here, sweet boy," she murmured, pulling them closer. Their bodies trembled but melted into her embrace, the warmth of their bond wrapping around them like a protective shield. She felt the breath of darkness lingering behind them, but it couldn't touch them here. The clock of Maplewood had stopped, but it had not claimed them. They were free, for now. And as the first rays of dawn began to break, spilling sunlight like liquid gold over the horizon, she vowed in her heart that they would leave Maplewood, never to return. The memories would haunt them, the darkness a ghost always waiting, but they had each other, and there was power in that, a resilience that shadows could never fully extinguish. "Let's go home," she whispered, and with an iron will they rose together, hands linked, stepping firmly into a future where the light would always shine brighter than the dark. Now, if you appreciate this story, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep our story community thriving. Your thoughts matter. Flood the comments section with your reactions and wild theories about Sarah and her family's fate. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Let's spread the thrill together.